welcome to this week's episode of The Wire App. I'm Jahnavi Sen. We've recently seen some heated debates in Parliament, a visit from Russia's President Vladimir Putin, and a vicious online campaign against critics of the film Dhurandhar. With me today to talk about all of this, I have lawyer Shahrukh and The Wire's political editor Ajoy Ashirwad Mahaprashasta. Thank you both so much for joining me.
Thank you for having me. Thank you.
If we start with what we've seen happening in Parliament, this is the second week of the winter session, and we've seen several heated debates and discussions, including around what it is that should be discussed. There was a prioritized discussion by the Union government on 150 years of Vande Mataram, and that has spanned several days in both houses of Parliament. Now, even before the session began, the opposition had made clear what they wanted to talk about, which was electoral issues around the special intensive revision of voter rolls, national security in light of the Red Fort bomb blast, and also air pollution in large parts of the country. Now, the Prime Minister began the session on quite a combative note. He used his opening speech to accuse the opposition of using Parliament as what he said was a warm-up ground for elections, but in fact, it was him who brought up elections. He brought up the NDA's win in Bihar recently and said that the opposition still seems to be in the despair of defeat and is doing drama. But I want to start with the days that were spent on the Vande Mataram discussion. Much of it was around, historical or perhaps ahistorical accusations, of course, involving Nehru, to the extent where Congress MP Priyanka Gandhi Vadra even said that perhaps the government would like to hold a special session just on Nehru, so it's over and done with once and for all. But Ajoy, to come to you, what do you make of the time allocated to this discussion and what was said during it?
Janvi, I am not surprised by the way the government has treated the parliament in this session, like all other sessions, where it has used the parliamentary platform to kind of advance its own political agenda all the time. So here, Vande Mataram, it's 150th anniversary, of course, and even if they wanted to do a discussion, it was coming against the backdrop of multiple other problems, which was indigo crisis was a sudden surprise for the government, but air pollution and the growing unemployment crisis, and there were multiple other issues which this winter session could have begun with. There were many bills also which required a lot of debate, as we know that many other bills were passed without enough discussion, but you have a whole session dedicated to Vande Mataram, which is integral to Hindutva's agenda in India and Modi's agenda, but you don't have enough time to discuss bread and butter issues, material issues. So this is number one. The second one is Vande Mataram was also an opportunity for the Modi government to talk about to kind of invoke icons from West Bengal, and we all know that West Bengal is going to polls in another 2 or 3 months. So the Prime Minister needed to set the agenda, set the tone for Bengal. This is number two, and we know that everything, even all the parliamentary debates, the BJP thinks of it as everything political and as a ground to attack the opposition forces. And even when it attacks TMC or the Congress, he has that in mind that all of this will bear some kind of electoral fruit for him. This is third. The Vande Mataram debate in itself was the number three. It was all of BJP, not just Modi, which he used to kind of attack the Congress and other MPs of the BJP also. They completely distorted history not in a way that they selectively quoted facts, decontextualized certain happenings during the pre-independence, and kind of obfuscated the whole idea of why Vande Mataram became problematic at a point of time when Congress was, the primary struggle was to get freedom from the Britishers. So what came across as just an observer is the BJP is trying to kind of polarize elections and Indian polity, again by bringing some sort of selective historical memory through which he can kind of again polarize the Indian electorate along Hindu-Muslim lines. So what we know is that many historians have also pointed out that Congress chose to expurgate a few stanzas which were added later in Anandamath by Bankim Chandra Chatterjee, and kept the initial two stanzas on Rabindranath Tagore's recommendation. And this happened because for both Hindu Mahasabha and Muslim League, well, Muslim League was both these parties of different kind of communalism, where Hindu Mahasabha was trying to propagate Hindutva, the Jinnah was trying to propagate two-nation theory and a separate nation for Muslims. Both of these parties used Vande Mataram to communalize the electorate at that point of time. The Congress, being the principal player to kind of, prioritize the nationalist struggle, sought the middle ground at that point of time, so that both Hindu Mahasabha and Muslim League are cornered and focused and tried to consolidate the nationalist ground in India at that point of time, instead of separating or kind of discriminating between different. So for Congress, it was always very clear that irrespective of caste, creed and religion at that point of time, everyone has to participate in the nationalist struggle. But for Hindu Mahasabha and Muslim League, that wasn't the priority. So this is the fact that I feel is being hidden in the current debate. So while the Prime Minister keeps talking about British divide and rule policy, they are following the same divide and rule policy while he's talking about the specific Hindu mode of nationalism, and Jinnah was also doing the same. Only the Congress was trying to resist at this kind of divide and rule policy, but it's very selectively he's quoting that Congress was the one who was the culprit, which is entirely wrong, historically wrong.
Yeah, in fact, one of the things that the Home Minister Amit Shah said during this debate was that if this song had not been divided, then India would not have been divided, and this was the cause for partition. Shahrukh, I wanted to come to you. How did you see this whole debate and what's been happening in Parliament?
As a lawyer, I sometimes do matrimonial matters, basically divorces and maintenance, alimony, etc. And we often find that we sit with the parties, courts send us to mediation. And before we go into mediation, we sit with the parties and we draw up a list of priority issues, which are always child custody, maintenance, alimony, in that order. We arrive into the mediation office and one party then suddenly takes off, going into a rant. And these are often past hurts and grievances and resentments, but they turn into an incoherent rant, and leaving aside all priorities. And everyone is taken aback. And mediation, the mediators often suggest that, give them some time, let them rant, let them sort of air their grievances. But the difference is that they do it on their own money and their own time. They're paying for those hours, right? And on balance is basically maintenance and alimony, sometimes custody as well. This is the national parliament. It's not being done on private time and private money. But the second point also is that in parliament very often, these hurts and these grievances are incoherent. And what you were talking about, they're completely decontextualized. They become emotional, they become ways of polarizing. Which brings me to my second point, which is that the ruling dispensation often claims very, very loudly that we're not a participative democracy. We're a representational democracy. You've elected us, and that's it. Now we will take care of things. So they've appropriated for themselves the power to prioritize issues. Not SIR, not clean air, not clean water, Vande Mataram, which is fine, but it's their power that they have appropriated to prioritize, which is not participative, which may or may not be reflective of what issues people actually want prioritized in this moment. So we have prioritized some kind of symbolic incantation of civilizational values, and on balance, weighting are more immediate material things that people need, that are issues of life and death often. And what is coming out of it, what is coming out of this debate is the government urging people to get in line and to perform patriotism all the time. So it has to be performed. It is not embedded, it is not inherent, it is not experienced. It is always performative. And that's a very low threshold for patriotism of any kind when it becomes performative.
Yeah, but you were talking about immediate concerns, and one of the other big discussions that has been happening in Parliament is around what's being called electoral reforms. It's named like that because the Union government has said it can't officially discuss the special intensive revision because that's something the Election Commission, a constitutional authority, is doing, and it's not a government matter. But during this debate, we've of course seen the opposition, including leaders like Rahul Gandhi, raising the issues that they have been, what they have called vote chori, capture of the Election Commission by the BJP government, and also the inordinate stress that booth level officers have been facing during the SIR exercise, things like that. And meanwhile, the Union Home Minister, in his speech on the matter, we saw going back to the bogey of ghuspetiyas or undocumented immigrants, and saying, that why do they keep wanting these immigrants to come and cast votes, even though the one SIR they have conducted in Bihar showed that this is really a extremely minuscule phenomenon. So I wanted both of you to talk about this debate and discussion a little bit as well.
The Election Commission was asked whether how many infiltrators did they find in Bihar, and they had absolutely no data about it. It's only the BJP and their supporters are constantly talking about infiltrators, and more than infiltration problem, they did it in Jharkhand, they did it in Bihar, and Himanta Biswa Sharma has branded all the Muslims as infiltrators. So it's a plan, it's a strategic plan to kind of find or villainize a certain community that we know already. But how SIR? So SIR is what I saw in Parliament. There was a certain kind of this talking about SIR, what Amit Shah in Rajya Sabha said, that I was strictly opposed to talking about SIR because in the Parliament, because I think that this is Election Commission's domain. But he ended up investing all his time, around an hour's time in Parliament, to talk about SIR. And immediately after Amit Shah spoke, as if his was the last word, the President, who also chairs the Rajya Sabha, invoked Rule 228 to stop any further discussion on SIR. So it was very cleverly done that the last word should be Amit Shah's and no one else's. But what has happened over the last few months, when the SIR in Bihar started, generally how we saw the opposition kind of talking about that, okay, SIR may be necessary because the electoral rolls are being manipulated, but how the Election Commission has gone about it, doing it in a hurry and in such less time without any kind of rigor, they were opposed to it, and they were opposing it throughout the country, that SIR has become a devious agenda of a pliant EC. So this is what they were arguing. All through, the BJP and the NDA parties were silent about it. But this parliamentary session, certain things changed. How it changed? Because this Prime Minister Modi had a meeting with Bengal MPs and told them that we should defend the SIR now, not just stay silent about it, and talk about how the government there in Bengal, Mamata Banerjee's government, is trying to incorporate all infiltrators as voters in Bengal. Completely a dog whistle without any evidence. And in Parliament, during the debate on electoral reforms, each and every, including Shah, which was the most vocal voice around, entirely owned up the whole SIR exercise as an exercise which will kind of segregate infiltrators from actual voters. So this is what the government has done, has actually ended up defending the Election Commission, further kind of cementing the notion or the perception that the Election Commission need not defend itself. We saw all of its press conferences where Election Commission was doing more of political talking, attacking the opposition rather than answering pinpointed questions of the opposition. It did not do that. Here, the government has completely come in support of the same election commission, which has a lot of answering to do in effectively answering the opposition's questions on SIR, which the election commission should have done. So it has actually, to me, it has actually cemented the notion that election commission is actually not working autonomously. It was time for the election commission to answer independently, irrespective of what the government believes. But now election commission has become, after this winter session, a body which finds itself doing or conducting an SIR only to find infiltrators, which is BJP's agenda. So this is what has gone out as a general perception. The number two is SIR again is not about BJP. It is to kind of polarize the electorate once again, because polarization is something which you have to keep doing at every 6 months so that people remain excited on these lines. These are deflectionary issues, and not talk about other things that matter to them. So Bengal elections, it has again found in SIR, the Modi government, another polarizing debate which will keep them excited till the elections, and it used the parliamentary platform. Similarly, the Vande Mataram debate we were talking about, no? So it has taken a historically supported, the government has supported a historically communalist stand. Here, we all know that Vande Mataram was actually popularized by the Congress from 1905 during the partition. Only when a certain Muslim groups found that, okay, these are like later the stanzas which were added later may be kind of a little offensive to the Muslim community, which is because of its anti-Nawab or Muslim rule imagery. So the Congress found a middle ground. Okay, the first two paragraphs, Tagore also found the first two has nothing in it that may be found as offensive, so let's keep it. The controversial ones, the stanzas can be expurgated in the form of national song. They did not completely do away with the song. They did not ban the song. They yeah, they consulted the poets. Yeah, so they did all those things. They kept it as the idea was to have a national song, so they kept the way acceptable to all communities. But Jinnah did not do that. Jinnah kept rallying against Vande Mataram, and in opposition, Hindu Mahata, another form of communalist, Hindu and Muslim communists, they kind of contested each other in trying to corner the Congress. That is what they were doing. And finally, you see both these parties, which Kharge also pointed out in Parliament, that both Hindu Mahasabha and Muslim League formed coalition governments in Bengal, in Northwest Frontier Province. So the idea was anti-Congress politics of both these parties, and they did form coalition governments while differing ideologically. So who is an opportunist historically? That is also a question to be asked now. So this Vande Mataram, both Vande Mataram and SIR has been used by the government to polarize the electorate along Hindu.
And Mahua also pointed out, I didn't know this, that those later editions in Anand Math, Bankim Chandra Chatterjee, she was saying that he also had a very complicated relationship with Muslims generally. And then there are later works that follow Anand Math that further complicate that relationship. There's a sense that so much anti-Muslimness was perhaps not the right politics. So he's himself reflecting on that song, on his earlier politics.
But politically also, I think, Shahrukh, the thing is that there are people who are fanning this idea of Vande Mataram being of communal. The other one is like, because it is communal, then we are fanning the idea. But within the Congress, Muslim leaders, Rafi Ahmad Kidwai or Rezaul Karim of Bengal or Sayyid Mahmood of Bihar, they found this whole debate around Vande Mataram from 1937 to 1939 as absolutely useless. They say that this whole song was sung in different provincial assemblies, Congress sessions, from 1905 onwards, and it wasn't an issue until Jinnah picked it up.
Well,
Yeah.
every
So,
time
yeah,
your patriotism becomes performative, which is what we were saying, it becomes a test, and it depends on whether you sing a song or not. That's a very messy space. Then we get into these.
So more than an identity issue, I think it was who was fanning the whole debate is more important. Yeah.
But also to add to, I think you asked that question. It's BJP's agenda to sort of fan this whole thing about Ghuspaitias. But this, I don't understand at a commonsensical level the coherence of this, because with all these Ghuspaitias apparently voting for the BJP, because the BJP is winning in Assam, the BJP is winning in Delhi, BJP is winning in UP. What are these Ghuspaitias doing? Why are they voting for the BJP? In terms of benefits, in terms of them cheating honest Indian citizens of benefits, that's also very useful if we have a performance audit of benefits generally. We've never had that. And again, in the Vande Mataram debate, Mahua made a reference to that. Let's talk about clean air, let's talk about clean water, let's talk about benefits then. Yes. We'd first need an audit to see what Indian citizens are getting and what they're being cheated out of before we actually have a meaningful conversation about Ghuspaitias. But again, in Parliament, like you said, that was a very clever strategy to say that that is the Election Commission's domain, separation of powers, we have nothing to do with them. But still, the government must have an opinion on the SIR. To have an opinion is not the same thing as controlling the ECI. Are you in agreement or are you in disagreement with the SIR? All other state governments have made their positions clear. You also need to come clean and say what is your position and for what reason in Parliament. And of course, he evaded that, but not really, because indirectly, tangentially.
What kind of got me, really astonished was that what Amit Shah said. Amit Shah kept talking about infiltrators, as SIR is an exercise to weed out infiltrators, but then spoke about only the corruption in electoral rolls, that the duplications and the ideological duplications have happened. These are like some inadvertent errors. He did not give even a single example of how infiltrators, except Sonia Gandhi, that Sonia Gandhi became a voter before being a citizen. So for him, Sonia Gandhi is the infiltrator and not the current problem. Vote chori has also happened during Indira Gandhi and during Nehru's time. How it is happening, he's just skirting all the questions that the opposition is putting on him. And why SIR is necessary, he went on to defense, because these duplications, that Rahul Gandhi's press conference, these are some pointers where house addresses or names or all of those things. He actually admitted that these are problems and that is why SIR is happening. But eventually launched into a tirade against infiltration as having necessitated the SIR. Yeah. So
the Election Commission actually, and if you look at their notification, the 25th June order, para 7, doesn't talk about infiltrators, doesn't use the word illegal migrants at all, talks about rapid urbanization, domestic migrations, duplications. So in court, they have never claimed that they're doing it to weed out infiltrators. The proxies come in, other people file PILs saying that we need this because they are infiltrators, and they say this in court without any affidavit, without any data, without explaining why they have not identified them, filed individual objections to them. So this is a narrative. If you get into the granular narrative, if you get into the nitty-gritties, it's not there. It's about rapid urbanization, duplication, etc. Then the question is, you keep updating your electoral rolls. And if suddenly you're rejecting them and saying that they're not good enough, again, who will account for the public money that you spend each time? Who will account for the resources spent? But those questions are not being asked. And again, this whole thing about migration, they don't understand circular migrations, right? People go to work in different states, come back to vote. always go back to vote. You're not accounting for that. You don't understand how things work on the ground.
I know we could talk about all of this for much longer, but I'm going to move us to our next topic of discussion, which is that Russian President Vladimir Putin visited India last week and a red carpet was rolled out for him. Our Prime Minister Narendra Modi greeted him at the airport. The two even shared a car together after that.
And hugged.
And hugged, yes, very much so. And yeah, much was made about this long-standing, strong relationship at a time when, of course, one of the big strains on this has been the tariffs that Trump has doubled on India because of India's imports of Russian oil, which Putin made it a point to say that despite whatever sanctions also may be there, these fuel exports would continue uninterrupted. The other point of consideration in the relationship has also been, of course, the war in Ukraine. And while Modi did mention it in his oral public remarks, saying that, India is on the side of peace, the joint statement has made no mention of it. And all the public, even media coverage of this event, this meeting has been extremely celebratory. So I wanted to ask both of you of what you make of this visit, the optics around it. Ajoy, would you like to start?
No, I was just kind of the media coverage of it was actually full scale. All the channels they celebrated Putin's visit almost unprecedentedly. I've never seen
Like a shadi.
yeah, like a shadi. Yeah, so such a coverage. But of course, like you said, this meeting was really important because it was a part of annual summit. So it wasn't something extraordinary. It became extraordinary because of the U.S. sanctions on India, about, and 25% of which is the penalty is because of Russian imports of oil. So that's why a lot of interest was there in Putin's visit, but and so it was fairly like what came out of it was less of, because what we are actually dealing with is after the Russian imports to Russian exports to India, we have currently a very bad trade deficit in 4 years. What our imports were around $13 billion in 2021, and now it has shot up to 63 or 68 because of the fuel. And Prime Minister Modi is trying to he is in a very tough, spot, because he has to think about trades. After the sanctions, the shrimp industry, the tariff, because after the tariffs, so the India exported its maximum chunk to the US, and those industries have collapsed here. So Prime Minister has to kind of balance it out by finding different markets, one of which is Russia. So there are some things like potatoes or shrimps which Russia could import now, but currently the trade deficit between Russia and India is very highly skewed in Moscow's favor. So India can't completely, what we know as deny. India and Russia have very historical ties. So it cannot, completely stop importing oil. So what may happen in the future, which many think tanks are also pointing out, that the oil imports could see some kind of drop in the month of December, but it will increase over a period of time through indirect and non-transparent means. So how it will impact, that has to be seen. The other thing is, in trying to kind of evade all sorts, the dollar, the most of the Russia and in India trade has happened in national currencies. How that will go on to impact the world trade order, that also has to be seen. So these are I think currently some things which we have to look at right now. It won't be how it will pan out in the face of US tariffs is somewhere to be seen. But both Moscow and New Delhi, they have kind of both admitted that it may squeeze trade in the short term, but long term there are many other things with which, especially the energy sector, in which both Russia and India can collaborate. This is number one. But what diplomatically, I don't know what exactly is because India today, we know that Trump and Modi spoke on phone and it was a warm gesture, and at the same time India is also trying to build very good relations with Putin. So, and just a day before Putin had to come here, UN, all the pressure on India is to kind of talk about uh, advising Russia to refrain from all these Ukraine hostilities. But India abstained from the vote on UN General Assembly, where it was the resolution talked about uh, y- the transfer of Ukrainian children, or like the kidnapping of Ukrainian children in Moscow. So India abstained from that resolution. So what it is trying to, it's fairly unclear right now, but what the Indian officials have said is that we are looking at our interests. That is what they keep saying, that we, although the tariffs will squeeze trade in the short term. In the long term, this energy sector and other kind of imports and exports, Russia is a long-term partner, and so this is how it will pan out. I'm not exactly very sure right now. Yeah.
But it was also meant to be symbolic, no, rather than substantive. He's got an international arrest warrant against him. We've got sanctions, tariffs, increased tariffs against us. So I think it was also just a symbolic showing of strength to say that we're not Western.
Yes.
But I mean, we're not anti-Western, but we can still be non-Western. We're looking for multipolarity. That's one. But even, I mean, foreign diplomacy is always rhetorical. And it's without meanings. But even then, I sometimes worry about what we say and what it means in the geopolitical context, but also in the domestic context. I mean, this repeated reference to peace. What does it even mean? How do we understand it as Indian citizens? These constant references to peace and the dissonance with everything else that goes on. Similarly with migrations, because there's a lot that's been also talked about in terms of mobility and migrations. What do we make of it? Again, in terms of the internal debates where we hate migrations, we hate illegal immigrants, we hate people coming. So that dissonance is something that I think about and worry about. But other than that, I think it was symbolic. It was, yeah.
So it was like, but what in how the domestic, how the BJP, for example, projects it for its domestic audience, is is devoid of this context of how Trump and Putin don't like each other, for example, or the whole tariff thing is against Russian imports. What the whole idea in BJP circles is that Modi is at the center of this multipolar, multilateral world, where and this whole Vishwaguru politics, where he is friends with all authoritarian leaders. In the sense, it could be Putin, could be Trump, could be Netanyahu, or could be Erdogan, and so this is something to be celebrated. That we need strong leaders at this current moment of history, and Modi is at the center of it. So this is how why Putin's visit was so celebrated by 90% of the television channels that and it was almost celebrated like a major event without actually reporting on what went on in the talks. Barely any television media reported on what happened during the talks, but Putin's visit, he was given a red carpet, he was given a dinner, all these kinds of,
It's like we throw the best
adjacent.
parties,
Yeah.
right?
So this is
What happens after
yeah.
the party, we don't care about, but we
So
throw the
all
best
these
parties.
visits are taken as opportunities for the BJP and the client media to embolden Modi's Vishwaguru image, and that is what. While in actually the reality may be completely
Even at the
different.
most superficial level, no, can't escape anyone that Trump's now being the party pooper, is not coming to our parties, is not inviting us to our parties. So we're doing what we are. But that dissonance is there. I mean, for the reasons that you're saying, that it's pitched at another level.
So no one would talk about, say, why India is now the second biggest after China importer of Russian oil. And if that has to come out, how will it come out? What is India's strategy? If that has to come down, what is India's strategy in doing that? We saw that how the US has sanctioned many private individuals who were importing through companies in Russia. Two companies, yeah, but Indian businessmen from Bombay, we reported on it also. They were also they are also being sanctioned by the US for indirectly importing Russian oil or Iranian oil, on which US has placed sanctions. So these things, the channels are very complicated, and that those channels of imports and export may not be direct. They may get more sophisticated, but this trade may not collapse. That is what most experts believe.
Is that there was no defense deal, no?
Yes, yeah.
The S-400.
S-400, they're more what the Kudankulam nuclear plant, there are two already in operation which Russian technology built. There are four others under construction. So that there is a lot of scope for that kind of cooperation. S-400, the Moscow officials are saying that India is going to import a lot of more anti-missile technology from Russia in the future, and then other fighter jets on which there are Sukhoi Su, the fifth generation fighter jets, which India may import from Russia. But all of these is again we are importing, so the trade deficit in Moscow's favor is only going to increase. How India could export their own things in the face of US tariffs, where US markets is practically shut for many of Indian producers, is not being discussed at all. But the Indian officials, our diplomatic correspondent,
we're offering students and labor.
Yeah, we are offering students, and there are other things also, the textile, vegetables, fruits, and all of those things. India has to now find new markets, and those were apparently between Putin's delegation and Indian delegation, they spoke about these possibilities. So let's see how it pans out.
Yeah. I'll take us now to our last topic of discussion for today, which is that the Ranveer Singh and Akshay Khanna starrer, directed by Aditya Dhurandhar, has caused quite a raging controversy online. There were several film critics who reviewed the film and pointed out certain issues with it, certain concerns, particularly how it moves kind of fluidly between fact and fiction in ways that could be quite confusing for viewers, presenting many things that are fact that are not, and also then attempts to villainize a community, and a very violent majoritarian outlook. That was the main part of the film. And these critics were then subjected to a very intense online campaign. Some, of course, the usual sort of unnamed accounts that say all sorts of things, but even from people associated with the film, people who are vocal supporters of the BJP. We saw this. The Film Critics Guild had to come out and issue a statement saying, these are targeted attacks, this is harassment. Of course, as usually happens in these online scenarios, the women critics faced a much larger brunt of it. And it got to the degree that one of these reviews has even been taken down from the internet.
I'm interrupting you,
yes.
But I don't know if you've seen this series of trolls which are saying that The Wire ran a positive review on Pathan.
Which was by you.
Because it was written by a Muslim. Yeah. But they've not done a positive review of Dhurandhar, and it was written by a Hindu. So Muslims praise Pathan, but Hindus don't know what they're doing. And but only if he'd read, because it's very critical of Pathan.
It is, absolutely.
But this whole thing about Muslims propped up Pathan and Hindu reviewers should prop up Dhurandhar is one fallout, but yeah.
But also, this kind of film and the kind of idea it's trying to project, we now see so much of in Bollywood. In fact, The Wire's reviewer, Tatsa Mukherjee, said at one point that it seems like much of Bollywood has forgotten to do anything else. Like this is the only kind of film that is being made, is successful. So I wanted to get both of your opinions on Dhurandhar and the controversy around it, what it's trying to do, and also what's happening to Bollywood as a whole.
Although Hrithik Roshan's written an interesting
Yeah.
post on Instagram saying, I don't agree with the politics.
Yeah.
Although on Twitter,
But then he had, yeah, exactly.
yeah,
there's
he
a-
said it's
yeah.
beautiful film. I suppose he's also balancing
Yes.
it, but he said that he does not agree with the politics of it.
Which means they are also under tremendous pressure. These stars, I think, in not offending the rulers of the country currently. So I am a huge Bollywood fan.
Yes, as we know. Yeah.
But I see there are two kinds of propaganda films which have come or have been released in the last 11 years. One is like
Especially in the last 5 or 6 years.
5 or 6 years. One is Vivek Agnihotri's brand, or the one who made Kerala story, yeah, which were very poorly made, and there was very little attention devoted to the craft of filmmaking. All of those things, they were just trying to kind of excite the audience, and the focus was on injustice of the majority community, or injustice meted out to the majority community. So this was their focus. It was blatantly political, but what Aditya Dhar, this director of Dhurandhar, is trying to do, first he made Uri, and he's a very good filmmaker, and he understands the craft, and he has this ability to tell a story in a very Bollywoodish way. But for me, this kind of craft, Uri and Dhurandhar, they actually break out from the secular common sense of Bollywood in a much more prominent way and successful way than, say, Vivek Agnihotri's films do. Because Vivek Agnihotri's and other such films are completely propagandist taken from a pamphlet. Here, Aditya Dhar is a director who's investing in making a successful film, and in a Bollywood way. So that secular common sense that Indian film buffs almost kind of assumed, okay, yeah, this is the thing, that he is changing very slowly, which will have a much longer term.
Slowly?
I think because Uri was made, and then he made the same team, his Yami Gautam and Aditya Sen made a very good film on Shahbano's case, which is called Haq. It's actually a good film. If had this not been our current political climate, had it released, say, in 2005, it would have been a really, really good film. But currently, every thing that is being made is being looked through the prism of the current majoritarian politics, and that is why. But as a film, it's quite good. So that kind of breaking out of this Amar Akbar Anthony mold, where Hindu, Muslim, Sikh, Isai turn out to be brothers, blood brothers actually, that common sense is being taken away, and even the progressive issues like Shahbano's case or Mathura rape case are spun in a way to hit out at the minority community. So this is and being politicized rather than, for example, Shah Bano's case was a case where all progressive groups protested against the Rajiv Gandhi's reversal of the order, Supreme Court's order, but that is not being said. It is or women, how women's group behaved at that point of time, that is not being pointed out. Everything is Aditya Dhar's films and dialogues also very subtly fits into the this majoritarian politics. Primary agenda is that all the previous governments have had only one policy, no development policy, no governance policy, but had only one policy, which is its appeasement politics, where it only appeased Muslims and did nothing
Since
else.
you mentioned previous governments. There's a dialogue in the film about, oh, we've got this intelligence input, but there's no point telling this government when there's a good government, then we'll, yeah. Shahrukh,
This time, I think he has become much more direct. In his third film, I think he will be much more direct.
You know, there's a disclaimer though. I haven't seen the film. I've seen trailers, but I can do a mini ethnography on all that has been written about the film and on social media. And a lot is being said about him sort of setting up the architecture of Lyari, of gang wars in Lyari and all of that. But I want to refer to this sociologist in Pakistan, Nida Kirmani, her name is. And she's only been working on Lyari. She's a public intellectual. She's also in Pakistan, what we'd call a urban Naxal in India. She's completely anti-establishment. And she's talked about Lyari. She's made a beautiful documentary film called Shadowlands on Lyari. Lyari is very interesting. She says that the popular perception is that it's the Columbia of Karachi. Gangs and gang wars, and it's a no-go zone. But there's a very rich and vibrant political life in Lyari. Lyari is a working-class neighborhood, very much on the left. And all Lyari residents, some of whom are actually members of the Communist Party of Pakistan, say that we've always been anti-government. And all anti-government movements have started from Lyari, against Ayub Khan, against Yahya Khan, even Pervez Musharraf, even Ziaul Haq. So we've also the rockbed of resistance to dictatorial politics in Pakistan. And she says that there's a lot of violence and masculinity in Lyari. There's equal resistance to it, non-violent political resistance led by men and women of Lyari. Right, and she's also talked about how the Baloch resistance also emanates out of Lyari. So therefore, the Lyari is not just the site of gang violence; it's also the site of state violence, disappearances, arrests, encounters of political dissenters. All of that is Lyari, right? We can't expect Bollywood to actually talk about these nuances. We can't expect Bollywood to, even recognize this very rich tapestry. But to sweep it under the carpet and pretend that everyone is anti-India is also a disservice, I think. And they're not just homogenizing Lyari politics, they're homogenizing all of Pakistani politics, Pakistani establishment versus the dissenters. They're even homogenizing, because it's a continuing spectrum, all Muslims, right? So forget Lyari, forget Pakistan, all Muslims are barbaric, are sort of very, very violent. And another point here, it's very interesting that the gang, Rahman Dakat, who's Baloch, is seen as being pro-establishment and working against India, which is sympathetic to the Baloch cause. It's akin to somebody making a film where a Kashmiri gangster is co-opted by Indian establishment to act against Pakistan. So there are all these dissonances. But once you paint a continuing spectrum saying Pakistan, Muslims, villains, all anti-India, then what are you leaving the audience with? How is the audience to react to that? And how is the audience to show its support for the Indian nationalist cause? You're not leaving them with answers. You're just saying that this is the danger. This is the danger India is in. Look what our spies are doing. Look what the good people in government are doing. What will you do? And that inarticulated anger and expectation comes out in very violent ways. You see that on social media now. You see that in the attack on film critics, where you can't even brook any kind of criticism of this film, because that's their way of performing their nationalism, showing their support to this great cause. That's the first point. I have two quick points to make. Another thread on social media is about the sacrifices. And of course, there are sacrifices. But this one focuses on how he's had to eat beef, to stay undercover and to stay in character. He's eating beef and he's crying. And that's a very powerful scene. You might even argue that it's sort of well-made film, well acted, all of that. But the dissonance in recognizing that kind of sacrifice and eating something that you don't want to eat, and what you're doing in the country every day in terms of restrictions on food. Just today, the leader of the opposition in Bengal has welcomed these goons who were given bail, who 2 days ago were beating this vendor for selling chicken patties. So this person was not even undercover. This person was not even overtly wanting to do something. He was living an honest life, an Indian citizen, selling something that he thinks is all right, and people were buying it and eating it. So how do you account for this kind of violence centered on food in India while recognizing the sacrifices of the spy in eating something that he didn't want to eat? But this is again this inarticulated expectation working itself out. You take it out on Muslims in India. You take it out every day because there's no other way to support the spy who's undercover in Pakistan. There's no other way to support this great government who's doing so much for national security. You just make sure that everyone conforms and you just take it out on Muslims. And the very last point is this whole thing, another thread about how stupid Yash Raj films are, because they talk so much about love. And had it been a Yash Raj film, they would have found ways to collaborate, the RAW and the ISI, and there would definitely have been one good guy in the ISI, and they'd have found ways. And it's a rejection of that idea, right? There's nothing good to be found on that side. We have to separate ourselves, and it has to be black and white. But look at the paradox. This is what is being pitched, but the most celebrated character is this barbaric, violent man, Rahman Dakat. So even then, even despite the narrative of, put love aside and put any kind of emotive connection and association aside, you've taken to Rahman Dakat for some reason. You've taken to his violence. You want to be him. You want to mirror him. So that is an interesting paradox. Right? It's very affective. But I think Yash Raj channels that affect in better, more reasonable ways.
No, but what she's trying to say, this is Dhurandhar may go on to become a very successful film, but this is exactly how this film is being celebrated. Is exactly a symptom of why Bollywood currently is in crisis, while all regional industries are doing much better, because it has abandoned all its stories. The stories of common people who were anguished by the whole system, by the corrupt system, and then they come out of it. The idea of sacrifice, idea of sorrow, joy, all were born out of a an unequal system that the common person is living in. So most of the celebrated films, Amitabh Bachchan's Angry Young Man, or Mithun Chakravarti's different kind of films, they were all films where this person, a common person, is trying to fight an exploitative system. They were to become the Bollywood, apart from secular common sense, which I used to borrow from Mukul Keshwan's term. So it was also accompanied by a necessarily anti-establishment message of the film, where individuals have the liberty and also the courage to come out of this system by showing some kind of, larger than life use. So that was the Bollywood film which changed during the 90s, where neoliberalism ushered in a different kind of film industry. And now when there's a call to go back to these kind of stories, all the violence, sacrifice is associated with supporting the government, not differing with the government or challenging the government. It's all about supporting the government, that okay, all the government. So it's completely falls in line. So historically, these films may be successful now, but they will never be remembered, however good a filmmaker you are. So his world over, the cinema is remembered for challenging the system, for talking about people who are not being able to to speak for them. Bollywood, despite all its commercial and colorful, impressions, always did that, and it's no more doing that at all. It's not talking about people. You can't find a poor person as a protagonist in the film. It always has to be a military officer or a big businessman trying to do something good, which is not real. So this is, yeah. And like the beef thing, they should. I was just thinking that they should have taken a Malayali Hindu or a Tamil Hindu as a spy in Pakistan. They wouldn't have cried for 40% of Hindus eat beef. Still, it has, yeah, it has become an
But
emotive
like
issue.
you're
Yeah.
saying, this controlling
Yes.
dietary preferences, controlling food
Everything.
is not the problem. The problem is that he had to eat it in Pakistan.
Okay, that brings us to the end of our discussion for today.
Oh, sorry, let me plug Shadowlands. We
Yes.
should watch that documentary.
Absolutely. Okay, thank you both so much for joining me today, and thank you all for watching.
Yeah.